All right, we're going to be in shift today, and I am going to start the conversation in the forward triple X page. So looks like that, right? And top of the page, Gary is telling a story about Gene Rivers. Now, Gene Rivers is a real estate agent, mega agent for Keller Williams Realty in Tallahassee. Gene actually started his business down here in South Florida. He was a mega agent in South Miami Homestead area prior to Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew came in, and you guys know the rest of the story. And not only did Gene lose his home and the market center, but his market was gone. Everybody that he sold to, it was gone. And, not funny, even though I'm smiling. And he had a decision to be made. And the decision was to move to North Florida. So he relocated to Tallahassee market. And within 2 years, he was selling over 100 homes again. So not part of today's conversation, but I want you to hear that, because if he can, you can. Now, Gary's talking about the shift, and he's using Gene Rivers to share this story. And he starts out by saying, to bring this point home, in the fall of 2008, in one of the toughest hit markets in the country, Tallahassee, Florida, top agent and successful businessman Gene Rivers worked with a group of agents who tracked their efforts and results over an 8-week period. Now, dropping down a couple lines, he goes on to share, on average, for every 34 contacts an agent made with prospective buyers and sellers, they netted one closed transaction. For every 34 contacts, they closed a sale. Now, my question to you is, do you know your number? And if you don't, this is one of the reasons why you want to start tracking your numbers, so that you know how many people you need to talk to, Nick, in order to close a sale. Simple, right? Now, what's interesting is prior to the shift, that number was actually 1 in 24. So 24 conversations in order to close a sale. And in the shift, that number went up to 34. Now, he goes on to say what makes that number notable is that past studies have shown an average contact to close ratio of around 24-1. Now, at first blush, 10 additional contacts per transaction may not feel like a lot more, but you must realize this means you've had to increase your efforts by a very challenging 42%. Just to get the same results. All right, I'm slowing down on that because I want you to hear that. What they found was they had to increase their effort by 42% in order to get the same results. Now, we're seeing a shift in the market from a perspective of the number of homes being sold year over year is down. Year to date, as I shared yesterday, sales are down here in Coral Springs. Units closed, not volume, not values, but units closed here in Coral Springs are down by 18.2% year to date. And I'm going to share some graphs with you in just a few minutes, and I'm going to talk to you about what this looks like. And here's the other thing I want you to hear. This time might be a little bit like that time. Now, if that's true, then it's going to take 42% more effort from you to get the same results. Now, raise your hand if you're happy with the results you've been getting. And I don't really mean that, correct? Even though there are hands going up. Not very many, by the way. So most people would probably tell you, Juanita, they're not happy with the results they're getting. Okay, listen, if you want to double the results, it's going to take 42% more effort just to get the same results. How much more effort is it going to take in order to double the results? Just think about that. Okay, if you kept giving the same in the past market 24-to-1 effort, your business would likely drop by a hard-hitting 30% or more. So if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're probably looking at a 30% decrease in sales. Now, you closed 24 sales last year. And seven sales fewer, and your average commission check is $10,000, you made $70,000 less. The same effort generated $70,000 less income. Sales decreased by 30%. And skipping over to page XXX IV or 34 Roman numeral style. Sorry, my screen keeps lightening up on me. I don't know why that's working that way. What is work? Now, at the top of the page, Gary's talking about a conversation he had with Gary Peterson, who's a legendary drummer for Guess Who and co-author of the Mammoth classic rock, American Woman. And he's sharing that he was in that conversation. He asked Gary Peterson if when he was performing, was he working or playing? His answer was insightful. He said, playing. I then asked him, when do you work? And he said, when I practice, I'm working. When I perform, I'm playing. And how hard I work when I'm practicing not only determines how often I play, but also how much money I earn. Now, my question to you is, how does that show up in your real estate business? What is work? What is play? What if I told you play is when you're sitting at the kitchen table on a listing appointment? Work is lead generation. It's talking to 20 people, not 19, not 18, not 17, because if you don't have the 18th conversation, you didn't get the listing because you didn't have the conversation. Work is going on appointments with buyers and sellers. It's following up. It's practicing and role-playing your scripts. It's all of those 20% activities that lead up to sitting at the kitchen table. Sitting at the kitchen table is playtime. Everything else is work. What does that look like for you? Now, middle of the page, he says, success always leaves clues. And this is a gigantic one no one can afford to ignore. A lot of real estate agents want to go straight to playing without ever putting in the work and practice beforehand. Couple lines down, he goes on to say, the poorest performing agents want to get paid a lot to play a lot before they've earned the right by working a lot. It's a faulty thinking. It's faulty thinking that when played out, never pays out. All right, I want you to skip all the way over to page 9. And the next part of the conversation is the anatomy of a shift. And shifts are easy to understand. They occur whenever supply and demand move out of balance. When seller supply exceeds buyer demand, it's a buyer's market. When buyer demand exceeds seller supply, it's a seller's market. A shift occurs when the market moves from one to another. Now, I'm just going to change the way he said that just a little bit. A shift occurs when the market moves. Is the market moving right now? Say yes. Yep. Has been. It has been moving. There are fewer properties being sold, 18.2% year to date. It's a shift. Now, going over to page 10, top of the page, why does the shift create pain? Why does the shift create pain? 2 reasons. First, it leads to fewer sales. Are there fewer sales happening right now? Say yes. So first, it leads to fewer sales and less available sales income in your market. Is there less available sales income in your market? Say yes. There's fewer homes being sold. There's more real estate agents than we've ever had in the history of ever. Competing for those fewer sales, there's less money to be made. It's a shift. Second, it tends to be abrupt and precipitous. The misleading aspect of an economic shift is that it seems relatively natural and gradual when looked at nationally. When experienced locally, it's usually dramatic and fast. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, so what you're looking at is you're looking at a graph of the real estate market from 1988 through 2007. And one of the things that I want you to notice is this dark line starts over here on the left-hand side with the number 8 in 1989 represents housing inventory. This lighter line on the bottom represents existing home sales, single-family home sales. Now, in 2005, look at the number of homes that are being sold. It's way up here. You could probably call that the peak. And somewhere between 2005 and 2006, we started to see the number of units being sold they started to decline. Right? Does that sound a little bit like what's going on right now? Say yes. Okay. Now, if you look at inventory, same time period, it starts to slowly creep up. It doesn't happen immediately. It happens slow. And then it happens suddenly. In 2006, you can see the inventory is just a little bit higher than it was in 2005. However, 2007, we're in a buyer's market. And by 2008, we're at 11 months of inventory. In 18 months, Nick, we went from a red hot seller's market to 11 months of inventory in 18 months. Now, am I saying the same thing is going to happen now? I'm not. Please don't hear that. It's interesting because I'm on Facebook, of course, and I'm looking at different Facebook posts, and there seems to be two different groups of people right now. There's a group like me who is telling everyone the market's shifting. Matter of fact, it's already shifted. And there's another group of people who are saying, don't listen to those people, the sky is falling group. They would call me one of the sky is falling group. The market's just fine. Matter of fact, it's just fine in South Florida. Okay, I get that. Now, are there fewer homes being sold today than there was a year ago? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Are there more real estate agents today than there was a year ago? Yes or no? Yes. Is there less income available for you than there was a year ago? Yes. So for me, I'm not talking about a shift for the homeowners. I'm talking about a shift for you guys. Are you in a shift? Yes, you are. Now, here's what's interesting. Looking at the next slide, if you looked at this locally, this is a national view. If you looked at it locally, and we looked at 5 major cities, Sacramento, San Diego, Las Vegas, Orlando, and New York City, the market peaked in the number of homes that was being sold between 2006, 2005, and 2006. And then it started to do what? It started to decline. And by 2007, we were pretty much in the same place that we were in 2003. This time might be like that time. Now, the next slide I want to show you is a view on home prices, because could the market shift? Now, this is a conversation I want you to get really good at with your clients. I want you to get really good at this at the kitchen table, especially, and slow down and really pay attention to this. So we know from the previous graphs that we looked at, Juanita, you okay? Okay, I've got water if you want it up here. Okay, from the previous graphs, you saw that the number of homes being sold started to go down between 2005 and 2006, and it was 2008 before we saw the prices start to drop. It took 2 years, Desiree, for that to start showing up in home values. Now, understand what causes home prices to go up or down is a simple supply and demand conversation. When you are in a market where there is low supply and high demand, prices are going to go up because buyers are fighting over fewer homes and they're bidding the price up. Now, as the market starts to shift, buyers become a little bit less aggressive in bidding that price up. You're seeing that now. You're seeing deals that are canceled that weren't being canceled 6 months ago. I had a conversation with a real estate agent yesterday who had a sale cancel at $750. She put it back on the market, and the highest offer they can get from the next buyer was $730. Now, the seller's judging everything based on that $750,000 offer, Clarissa, and they're saying, I want $750, but nobody else is willing to pay $750. The new highest and best offer today is $730,000. Slow down and pay attention. That's a sign you're in a shift. Now, what's interesting is if you look at this graph, the prices continue to fall, kind of like this little picture up here that I drew that looks like an L, looks like kind of a reverse hockey stick. It evens out at the bottom and then it gradually increases on the right-hand side. And it's kind of hard to see the numbers because they're faint, but 2006 is right here. And 2016 is right here. In other words, it took 10 years for the market to get back where it was before the prices started to drop. Now, could today be a little bit like, could this time be a little bit like that time? And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if it is a little bit like that time, Nick, if today is a little bit like it was in 2006, and you're looking at your home, which is currently worth $800,000, and you knew it was going to be 2032 before it was worth $800,000 again, what would you do? Get really good at this conversation. Now, does that mean prices are going to drop? I don't know. If inventory continues to go up and supply goes down, then yes, it's a fact. Prices are going to drop. There's just no way around that. Okay. However, it might look something like this, right? It might. We don't know. And then again, it might look something like this. In other words, we have a small decrease. It doesn't last a very long time. And maybe this is 2022 and this is 2024. And you've got a 2-year period before your home is worth the same amount of money that it's worth today. It's possible, okay? You might be in a market that does this. It's called a V market. Home prices go down for 6 months. It takes another 6 months for them to come back up. And maybe this is 2022, and maybe this is 2023. And even then, life is good. And from there, the values start to come back up again. That might happen. It's happened before. This time might be like that time. But then again, there is a possibility when you look at all the factors that affect the market that the values might come down, level off, and then come back slowly. And it's possible if this happens somewhere between 2022 and 2023, that your home today may not be worth the same amount it is today until 2032. It's possible. And the only question I'm asking is, if we had a crystal ball and we knew that was the case, what would you do? Now, to the buyer who's saying, okay, John, I get that, and should I buy? Well, history would tell us that as long as you're in your home 9 to 10 years, it doesn't matter what happens here. It's just like buying a stock and watching it every day and going, oh my gosh, I just lost money. Oh my gosh, I just lost money. Oh my gosh, I just lost money. Well, no, you didn't. You don't lose money until you sell.
Right.
It's the same thing. If you bought a home today, Juanita, and the value went down by 10%, it doesn't matter unless you're selling. By the way, the reverse is true. If you bought a home and you're watching the value went up, the value went up, the value went up. I'm celebrating, I'm celebrating, I'm celebrating. Really, what are you going to do with that? Because have you really made any money? No, not unless you sell. Local economist of choice. Strategic pricing expert. Master these conversations in order to be the realtor of choice in your market versus you should hire me because I'm really nice and I work hard.
That'd be working in corporate.
All right, talk to me. What'd you hear?